Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I want to talk about what it means to be an intentional student studying to become an intentional teacher. So the concept of the intentional teacher is something that is really pounded and hammered into our heads. From the moment that we start this program, we write essays on it, we have class discussions on it, we have debates on it, we have what does being an intentional teacher look like, what does being an intentional student look like. And technically, there is no right or wrong answer because this is sort of opinion-based, but being an intentional student is something that I sometimes struggle with in general throughout all my classes. I'm not the best at math. English, I love reading and writing, but I've for some reason just always hate the content of an English class. So classes that I tend to dislike, I lose intentionality when studying those subjects, especially in college. I really struggle with holding myself accountable in those specific subjects. I find it in philosophy, that's another general required class I'm taking, that I find it hard to be intentional in. And I think being an intentional student ties into being an intentional teacher, because when you're an intentional student, I feel like you're learning those skills and you're building that, you're building that skill set that leads to you becoming an intentional teacher. I don't struggle with intentionality in my education classes like I do in my GEP classes because, to me, I see a clear end goal with my education classes. I see, those are the classes that interest me because they're relevant to my career and they're relevant to me. I find them fascinating, I find them interesting. So of course I'm intentional in the classes where I see the clear defined reason for why I should be intentional in those classes. Now, as for my other classes, it's something that I'm struggling with, and I'm only just a freshman, and I have the next 2 to 3 years to really hone in on this skill. But being intentional in my other classes are important because I do think that GEP classes are important, especially as an ed major, because I think that GEP classes lead you to having, well-rounded content knowledge and leads to you being a well-rounded teacher. Among other things, I think it exposes you to new ideas. In my case, if I was only taking education classes, I would literally see the same 60 people, which sounds like a lot, but I know practically every ed major in the freshman class, and I would only see them. I wouldn't meet any of the friends that I've met in my classes, or I wouldn't be able to take classes with any of my friends who aren't ed majors, which are most of my friends. So I think that GEPs are important, and it is important to be intentional in those classes, even if the reason for being intentional doesn't seem obvious in the beginning. So, let's really dive into this. Got my notes here. Let's go. So, the definition of intentional is something that is done on purpose, deliberate. Deliberate is really the word I think that is the star of this definition. I think that it really drives home that when you're being intentional, you're being deliberate. You are giving focus, time, attention, energy, and respect to what you're doing, what you're saying, how you're interacting with people. And a intentional and deliberate learner is someone who is persistent in the continual process to acquire, understand, and use a variety of strategies to improve one's ability to attain and apply knowledge. It really goes down, deep and down on the idea that when you're an intentional student, it's lifelong. You are a student for the rest of your life, and not just when you are a student in a classroom. And how that applies to being an intentional teacher is intentional teachers act with specific goals in mind for the children in their care and set up their environment and the the tools that they use to learn accordingly. So being an intentional teacher, you need to have goals for your student, and like a reflective mirror, as an intentional student, you also have to have goals. You have to have goals for what you're trying to learn, how you're going to learn it, and the intentional teacher can see that and is trying to inspire their students to have goals. They come up with creative lessons that reflect, all the different kinds of learning styles and abilities of the students in their class. Now, of course, you cannot accommodate every single person the way that you want to in a classroom, but there is so much you can do to do your best. I notice in one of my classes this semester is that, unfortunately, my English teacher is the exact opposite of an intentional teacher. The exact opposite of an intentional classroom filled with intentional students. You're probably going to get sick of me saying the word intentional. So in this English class, which I'll just use as an example, my teacher does not choose materials or lessons that the class, and I will act as a spokesperson for my class since there's no one else here to speak for it except me, is not engaging. We are not focused, you're distracted, you're bored. We sit there for an hour and a half listening to this woman talk and lecture. It's not even a proper lecture with notes, so at least you're taking notes and you're focusing, and there's diagrams and charts and videos. No. This is her sitting in a chair with a book, for example, The Marriage of Heaven and Hell by William Blake, which is what we're studying right now, and reads to the class and tries to force a class discussion, and it's literally like nails on a chalkboard painful to sit in that class and have to be in there with that teacher. And I think the problem is, after she kind of blew a fuse one day and just told us, you know what, I'm not teaching students who don't want to be taught. And I think we were a little taken aback. I mean, this has been the status quo the entire semester. She has not changed it. She has not seemed upset by it, but it must have just been one of those days. So my friend and I went to go talk to her after, and we were like, well, as punishment, so to speak, she had given us an essay to write because we weren't going to participate in class. She was going to get us to participate in some way. Well, I mean, personally, I think it was the wrong way. Not that I'm against writing an essay, it was just the way everything was done. So Paige and I, Paige, who's also an education major, went to talk to her, and we were like, hey, we don't think this is fair. Don't want to get into it because it turned out to be not the best situation, and by me and Paige going to talk to her, I mean Paige went to talk to her, because I'm not going to lie, I'm terrified of this teacher. She terrifies me. Well, I did send her an email as opposed to, but basically, at different times, Paige and I I don't want to say the word confronted, but tried to have a conversation about ways that, the class is unfair, the class is not engaging, the class, I would never use the word boring. And the teacher responded by saying, I don't understand why you're not engaged. This material is engaging, and I am engaging, so be engaged. And it was so hard to hear. I'm trying not to get into too many specifics because I don't think that that's fair to this teacher necessarily. She's probably going through a lot. In fact, I know she's definitely going through a lot, so it makes me want to cut her some slack. But that's an example to me of a teacher not taking responsibility in being an intentional teacher, and therefore not inspiring me or others to be intentional students. It's a two-way street. An intentional teacher inspires intentional students, and I feel like, especially since coming to college, I've seen a huge lack of intentional teachers, specifically in my GEP classes. Not so much in my education classes, not to be biased or anything. Also, something intentional teachers do and intentional students is time management. And it's just a way that, you respect your own time, you respect teachers' time. It's something I'm horrible at. I am the worst procrastinator, but I'm still learning. I'm still learning the way I learn, and I'm 19 years old. I'm still learning the way my teacher teach, and teachers teach differently. Every single teacher you're gonna have. So that's, you're taking 5 classes a semester, each semester. That's 5 different teaching styles each time. And last but not least, for, again, both intentional students and intentional teachers, is the willingness to keep learning. Is for students, you know, it's like I said, you know, learning is lifelong. You've got to be willing to learn and to be taught, to be deliberate in your day-to-day life with enriching yourself. And when it comes to teachers, it's the exact same thing. The exact same thing. You enrich yourself by continuing to have a willingness to learn. That's all I have to talk about today. I just really was sitting there thinking about my English class and thinking about all the ways that my teacher fails us by not being an intentional teacher, but also thinking about the ways that I fail my teachers and myself by not being an intentional student. And this will be the last time you hear me say the word intentional. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!